If you are going through a split right now, I know exactly how overwhelming it can feel. It's like your whole life has suddenly been put into a blender. Think of this explainer as a guided coffee chat with a knowledgeable friend. Let's just sit down, take a deep breath, and untangle the legal side of things together.
Just a quick heads up before we get into the weeds, I want to gently set the stage for our role here today. We are Olanur. We're an AI lawyer matching platform, which basically means we connect people who need legal help with the right professionals. We are a supportive guide and a tech platform, not a law firm providing legal services. So what we're chatting about today is general information, not legal advice. Our goal is simply to empower you with clear, accurate knowledge about Ontario law, so that when you are ready to take that next step, you're fully prepared.
Okay, let's dive into this. When a relationship ends, where do you even begin? That really is the biggest question, isn't it? When the hard, emotional conversations are mostly done, you're kind of left staring at this completely blank slate, wondering how on earth you legally separate your lives. Where do you start untangling years and years of shared history? Well, the answer, and the document that is going to bring order to all of this chaos, is something called a separation agreement.
At its core, a separation agreement is exactly what it sounds like, but it has a whole lot of legal muscle behind it. It's a private domestic contract between you and your ex. It's literally where you write down the rules for your new, separate lives, settling things like parenting, support, and property entirely privately. And the absolute beauty of this document is that when it's done right, it is fully enforceable by Ontario courts. You're effectively taking the steering wheel. You're controlling your own future and settling things predictably, rather than leaving it up to a judge who doesn't know you or your family to decide your fate.
Now, I know a split feels like this massive, tangled knot, but a standard domestic contract actually breaks everything down into 4 very manageable pillars. First up, there's parenting and decision-making. That covers where the kids live and how you make big choices about their health and schooling. Second is child support. This one is usually pretty straightforward, as it's guided by federal tables based on income. Third is spousal support, whether it's paid, how much, or maybe a clear agreement that neither of you is going to pay. And finally, property and debts. Who gets the family home, how you split the bank accounts, and who gets stuck with which credit card bill. Seeing the issues neatly categorized like this really shows that the chaos can actually be boxed up and sorted out.
Let me clear up a very common point of confusion right now. Settling your terms and legally ending your marriage are 2 completely different things. A separation agreement settles all those practical, financial, and parenting terms we just talked about. It is a private contract you can start working on the very day you live apart. A divorce, on the flip side, is a court order that officially ends the legal marriage itself, and usually you have to be separated for a full 12 months before you can even get one of those. So think of it like this. You use the separation agreement to figure out your day-to-day life right now, and the divorce is just the official legal stamp that comes way later. You might be wondering what it actually takes to make this document legally binding under the Ontario Family Law Act. Well, the baseline rules are surprisingly simple. First, it has to be in writing. A verbal promise, no matter how heartfelt it was at the kitchen table, just won't hold up. Second, it must be signed by both of you. And third, those signatures have to be witnessed by someone who is 18 or older. And honestly, no, the law doesn't strictly say that witness has to be a lawyer. But, and this is a big but, while those are the minimum rules to make the contract exist, they definitely aren't the rules that make it bulletproof. So, the crucial point is how you actually protect this agreement from totally falling apart down the road. And that brings us to the single most important concept in family law, full financial disclosure. Before you sign anything, both of you need to honestly lay out every single financial detail on the table. You need the documents to prove your assets, like the real value of your homes and vehicles. You need to list your debts. You need to show your true income. And, this is absolutely crucial, you must disclose your pensions. Putting all these financial documents out in the open ensures that both of you are agreeing with your eyes wide open. It is your ultimate protective measure.
But let's say you skip that step. Let's say you just want it over with, you know? You draft something up quickly, you sign it, and you move on. Why would a court ever throw a seemingly finalized agreement out months or even years down the road? It actually happens way more often than you'd think, and when it does, it drags everyone right back into the exact same legal nightmare they were trying to escape in the first place.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why those agreements fail and how you can prevent it. Under Section 56(4) of the Family Law Act, a judge can set an agreement aside for 3 main reasons. First, failure to disclose. If you hide a pension or a massive secret debt, the agreement is basically built on a lie. The solution? Exchange full, written disclosure. Second, lack of understanding. If one person didn't really grasp what they were giving up, the court will step in. The solution there is independent legal advice. having your own lawyer explain the fine print to you. And third, ordinary contract issues, like being pressured or forced to sign. The fix for that is simply taking your time and signing without any pressure. Doing these three things, that is your absolute shield.
Let's look at how this plays out in the real world with two very different paths. Take a couple from Mississauga. They had a house and kids, they used a mediator to figure things out peacefully, and they each spent just a little bit of money to get independent legal advice before signing. Their agreement was rock solid. Now contrast that with a couple from Ottawa. They wanted a quick fix, so they used a cheap internet template, and one partner quietly left their workplace pension completely off the table. Well, 2 years later, the other partner found out, took it to court, and the judge completely overturned the property terms. Cutting corners turned a cheap little template into a massively expensive legal disaster.
And when I say expensive, I want you to really absorb this number. $10,000 to $50,000 or more. That is the typical cost per spouse of a contested court battle in Ontario when you can't reach an agreement or when a bad agreement gets thrown out. That is money draining right out of your family's future. It's coming straight out of your kids' education funds, out of your retirement savings, and going directly into litigation.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how staggering it is when you put those costs into perspective. A DIY template might only cost you a few $100, sure, but it carries immense risk if it's never reviewed. Having lawyers negotiate a solid, fair agreement usually lands somewhere between $2,500 and $7,500 per spouse. But compare that middle path to the massive spike for a contested court battle, starting at $10,000 and skyrocketing from there. Honestly, spending a little bit on independent legal advice right now is incredibly cheap insurance compared to the catastrophic financial hit of going to court later.
I know, looking at those numbers and hearing about the strict rules for financial disclosure, it can all feel incredibly daunting. If you're feeling a bit out of your depth right now, that is perfectly normal. But I want to gently remind you of something very, very important. You do not have to navigate this alone. The law is complex, absolutely, but there are dedicated professionals whose entire job is to guide you through this safely and make sure your future is protected.
In fact, there are specific situations where talking to a lawyer isn't just a nice to have, it is an absolute must to ensure things are fair. If you have kids and need to work out support or parenting schedules, if either of you has complex assets like a pension, a business, or significant savings, if there's a big income gap between you and spousal support might be waived, or, and this is absolutely crucial, if there has ever been a history of pressure, control, or a power imbalance in the relationship. In any of these cases, getting a professional's review is essential before you put your name on any dotted line.
Now, finding that professional shouldn't add to your stress. You definitely don't need to spend hours cold calling law firms just hoping to find someone who gets it. This is exactly where Olanur steps in as your lifeline. Our platform matches you with verified Ontario family lawyers in minutes, and it is completely free to use. You just describe your situation once, and we connect you with someone who has the specific expertise to review your agreement, provide that critical independent legal advice, and ultimately give you total peace of mind. No pressure, no stress, just the right help exactly when you need it.
I want to leave you with this final vital thought. A separation agreement works best when it is built carefully once rather than patched up after a dispute. Doing it right the very first time, with full transparency and the right legal advice, is honestly the greatest gift you can give your future self. It allows you to close this chapter cleanly and step into your new life with real security. So as you look toward tomorrow, are you going to take the shortcut that might cost you everything, or will you take that critical first step to build an agreement that truly lasts?